And we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. And in today's episode, we are chugging right along in our positional series here, breaking down each position on the Indianapolis Colts. We've done 3 episodes so far on the offense, the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the most recent one, the wide receivers that we dropped on Saturday. So, with that being said, guys, we are going to continue, and today we're going to talk about the tight end position for the Indianapolis Colts. And Derek, right off the top, before we do this, just want to let everybody know that this episode is presented by Prize Picks. So be sure to go visit prizepicks.com today or use their mobile app. And when you do so, when you sign up, use the code BTJ for a $100 deposit match. So, Derek, talking about this tight end room overall when it comes to it, I mean, I think it's very fair to say this is a very interesting group for the Colts because a lot of different guys in a lot of different situations, a lot of different types of tight ends as well, which I think is quite interesting. When you got your physical freak type of guys, the guys that are 6'6", 6'7", have the height, but you also have some other guys who are more of those yak guys, the guys after the catch, the vertical threats down the field, the guys that can do a little bit more, that are more like glorified receivers at the tight end position, right? So you got a little bit of everything when it comes to this group, and really outside of one player on this tight end room, pretty young group as well. And with that comes inexperience and comes some question marks when it comes to the tight ends. But before we kind of dive into them, Derek, what's your overall take here on the Indianapolis Colts tight ends looking forward here into 2024?
Well, we talked about it in another video. We thought that it's one of the biggest wild card positions when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts this upcoming year. A lot of it is going to come down to one player that we've talked about several times over the offseason so far, and that is Jelani Woods. But, this is a tight end unit that, like you said, has a lot of different skill sets, a lot of different players that are different in their physical sets. So this is definitely going to be a very fun unit to cover throughout the year and see what it looks like.
Yep. And you mentioned him, so I thought we'll start off with the guy that we presume right now, and again, things can change, but the guy that we think's potentially going to take that number one tight end position here this year, that's Jelani Woods, the third-year tight end for the Indianapolis Colts out of Virginia. 6'7", 255. He's only 25 years old and missed the entirety of the 2023 season due to some of those hamstring issues that he had. And it was just a very unfortunate sort of thing for Jelani Woods, where as soon as one hamstring healed up, the other one started acting up, right? And just could never get right in 2023. But now he's had a full off season, really a full year to recover. And he's been a part of everything so far in the spring for the Indianapolis Colts. And he's made some plays already in minicamp, OTAs, all that stuff like that. So when it comes to Jelani Woods, Derek, I mean, we've talked about it, I feel like, to death at this point. But, I mean, you talk about the physical tools that Jelani Woods possesses. Obviously, we know the 10 out of 10 RAS score for a tight end, one of the best athletes purely from the tight end position we've seen ever. But just a guy that's an absolute unit when it comes to just his ability on the field and just his ability as a player. And we saw him, Derek, even though the Colts offense, his rookie season, was not great to say the least, especially throwing the football. Jelani Woods still was making plays, even though he wasn't targeted a whole lot. I mean, the dude at the end of the day was still making plays and still showed you enough, in a season where you lacked explosive plays, you lacked playmakers. Jelani Woods still showed you some stuff, man, and I thought that was definitely something really cool to see for him. I mean, in 15 games for Jelani Woods in his rookie season, he had 25 catches, 312 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Now, that's not like a crazy stats by any standpoint, but, I thought he did the best given the situation that the Colts were in and the situation and the role that he was kind of given that season. So now he goes into this offseason, Derek, and has a great opportunity here to take that number one tight end, position by the horns and really solidify himself as that guy moving forward. Talk to me about Jelani Woods.
Yeah, I mean, he is going to be potentially the he is definitely the X factor of this team. I mean, there is so much to like about Jelani Woods, but there's a lot of questions. And the health is the beginning in the forefront of those conversations, but the questions also remain of, and a little bit more of a lighter side, being like, what can this guy become? And we saw that in 2022 when he was healthy. I mean, I made this stat on Twitter the other day and said, of the 25 catches that Jelani Woods had, 19 of those resulted in either a first down or a touchdown. So the majority of the catches that he has, not even just the majority, the vast majority of the amount of catches that he has results in game-changing amounts of yardage. So what this guy really is he's an impact player. And who knows how much better he's gotten throughout this time. Clearly, from a standpoint of being healthy, he wasn't able to do as much physically for his body and wasn't able to get as much reps, physically. But hopefully during that time was able to take more of a chance with the mental aptitude of the game and doing the same thing that Anthony Richardson had to do, which was, from a physical standpoint, you're not out there getting the reps, but from that mental standpoint, what have you taken in? What have you learned? What are you learning about the game while taking those mental reps, basically? So if he was doing all that and his body is back to being what he knows it can be, then there is no limit to what Jelani Woods can do on the football field. And I'm very excited to see what Jelani Woods becomes in 2024.
It's wild to me that we have not seen Jelani Woods in a competent offense yet. That's the crazy thing. We haven't seen him in a competent offense, and we haven't seen him with a competent quarterback, or even a quarterback that can utilize his skill set at all, right? So I am very intrigued, like you, to see what the Colts can cook up with him if he can stay healthy. And again, just with the type of athlete he is, I know it's like your body's just so different from 99% of the guys, even pros, right? So like, his body probably responds differently than a typical athlete. So hopefully now he's good. That was just a freak thing and he's good to go. Seems like so far he's had no issues. So I'm hoping that continues. But you're right. When he's on the field, I mean, he's definitely a difference maker for this team, no doubt about it. And so the Colts have to hope that he stays on the field because we know when he does, he is definitely a playmaker for this team. But all right, let's continue on looking at the tight ends. Probably the guy that's been the number one tight end for the Colts, especially last year, Kylen Granson. We need to talk about him, Derek, because I know this guy's not flashy. And I know a lot of people don't really when they think of the tight ends, when they hear Kylen Granson's name, they're kind of like, whatever, And I would say Kylen Granson is about an average player to me. He's an average tight end, nothing special. But he is a little bit different when it comes to the physicality standpoint, right? He's not the most physical, gifted guy in the world, right? He's not a Jelani Woods. He's not 6'7", 250. He's that kind of, like I talked about earlier, that kind of hybrid kind of wide receiver / tight end sort of guy, right? And he's a guy, he's only 6'3", 240, but I think he's a guy, Derek, that offers you some unique mismatches. And he made a few plays last year. Like, it's not like he didn't do anything. In fact, he led the Colts tight ends in pretty much every category. He had 30 catches, 368 yards, averaged a little over 12 yards per catch. So, I mean, his role wasn't crazy by any stretch. He didn't get a ton of targets. But I've always viewed Kylen Granson as a nice, solid option at tight end. What are your thoughts on him and what he can provide for the Indianapolis Colts in terms of just his skill set?
Well, and even at 6'3", 240, I mean, he is a tough son of a gun. I mean, the play that everybody remembers, Jonathan Taylor, when he broke that big run against the New England Patriots that sealed the game. Remember, it was Kylen Granson that had the lead block and the seal block on that play. So, I think his blocking aspect a lot of times gets overblown. A lot of people did question that, at 6'3", 240, how are you going to handle blocking on the outside? And he's done pretty well at that. I know that a video a couple weeks ago we had posted where I was talking about how I think Kylan Granson could be one of the odd men out when it comes to this roster because, the five tight ends that we're going to talk about here in this video, one of them is probably going to end up getting, either cut or sent to the practice squad because I don't think there's any way that you could hold five tight ends on the roster.
He could.
I mean, you
He could.
could, but I mean, somebody somewhere else in the position group, you'd have to end up cutting down somewhere else. I don't know where exactly that would be, but I mean, that's a great question to ask for a future video. But yeah, Kylan Granson, and like you said, even with Kylan Granson, who was drafted in 21, I mean, he wasn't a very vital point in the offense in 21, but over the last several years, right, hasn't really been put in a great position to succeed either. In 2022, we were a horrendous offense. And then in 23, I mean, he had a quarterback that wasn't great at getting him the football all the time. So, Kylan Granson just kind of had to do what he could. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Cody, didn't he get his first touchdown as a Colt against Houston in week 2? If I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So it took him over 2 years as a Colt to actually be able to get a chance to, get a touchdown, which is absolutely insane. Obviously, not.
And I
really
don't blame him. They didn't get in the ball.
No,
Like I don't blame
they
Kylan
haven't.
Granson for
I mean,
that.
I was giving him props on the sense that, the Colts offense the first 2 years he was on the roster was just not catered to his abilities. And then clearly in 2023, you had a bunch of tight ends on the roster that were getting plays. So Kylan Granson really didn't get much of a chance. But yeah, I like Kylan's skill set. I think it's a great skill set to have. It really opens up the field. It'll just be interesting to see where he is on the depth chart this year, wherever they put him.
Yeah, but I think he's just been like last year. He was he was like the most targeted tight end on this team. So it's hard for me to see them moving from him for sure, especially because he knows the system pretty well as well. And he played all 17 games, which is important. So,
hey, what's going on, everybody? Summer's here, so that means NBA, football, all those types of stuff. It's not here right now. So we got the MLB and the WNBA to pass the time. I haven't really gotten a whole lot into the WNBA as of recently, but have had a couple things here. A lot of Asia Wilson props here that are really good that I'm very interested in making. So I would definitely keep an eye out for any of those. Shohei Ohtani for MLB props. Highly suggest you guys hit that over when it comes to Ohtani, when it comes to total bases. Anytime you can get a chance to get Ohtani, especially even with just a 1.5 or 2 total bases, definitely want to try and take advantage of those. Because all it takes is one good hit from Shohei Ohtani to get you above that number. So definitely would encourage you guys do that. Be sure to download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, it's sponsored by Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
All right, continuing on looking at the tight ends for the Colts, we got to talk about probably, I don't know, Derek, you want to talk about Ogletree? You want to talk about Will Mallory? Which guy you want to talk about?
Well, go ahead and start with Ogletree.
We'll talk about Drew Ogletree. So another draft pick for the Colts. They've invested a lot of draft picks in their tight ends the last couple of years, but a guy, obviously, we know he had some legal stuff he was dealing with, but seems like all is good there. But another guy that has some pretty good size to him, 6'5", 260. He's only 25 years old, Derek. And I thought when on the field, Drew Ogletree showed some nice things. But, obviously we know he dealt in that first year, I believe it was that first year, with that injury where he had that serious injury. Yeah, He had that
Mhm.
serious injury. So really last year was kind of like his first opportunity, Derek, to really get on the field and do anything of note. And, to his credit, in, the 12 games that he played, 9 catches, 147 yards, but he did have 2 receiving touchdowns as well. And I did feel like Drew Ogletree had some nice flashes as well from the tight end position. And he's got the size, like I mentioned. He's athletic. So I mean, it's just another big athletic tight end that you have in this roster, Derek. Obviously hasn't produced a ton yet, but again, hasn't really had a lot of opportunities to. So, what are your thoughts on Andrew Ogletree here and kind of his fit with the Colts tight ends?
I think I'm a little bit higher on Andrew Ogletree than what you are when it comes to overall his usage in the systems. Ogletree, I really like because he's almost the same size as Mo Cox and Jelani Woods, maybe just a tiny bit smaller, but I mean very close in size. But he's a much more athletic guy than Mo Cox, and I really like Ogletree because he's somebody that he was used in a lot of different ways last year. He could catch the ball in the middle of the field. He could catch the ball in the red zone and make a play. He can catch those, improvised routes that, you throw 30, 40 yards down the field. He has that ability to be able to do all those things. He can make those contested catches. Ogletree has been a great addition to this team. And he was a 6th-round pick in the 2022 NFL draft. And, like you said, that first year had that injury. And then last year was his first time to really get any kind of action. And in all honesty, I would argue that Ogletree last year was the best looking tight end of all the tight ends on the roster, at least just from like overall making bigger splash plays. Will Mallory just didn't quite get a chance to do as many big splash plays. Mo Cox had a couple of big plays, but again, how unathletic he actually is when it comes to overall speed. Kylan Granson had a couple big plays too, but I just go back to Ogletree and I just see that you can utilize him again in so many different ways. I really like Ogletree. I hope that he will be tight end number 2 on the year or tight end 3. Obviously, his best case scenario is he's going to be tight end 3 this year, but I would love for him to be tight end 2 or tight end 3 on this roster. But I'm very excited to see if Ogletree can keep building on what he was able to do last year.
Yeah, I like the flashes I saw from him for sure. I feel like he has that knack for making some big plays. So that's definitely something I think is very valuable. And hey, you know what? You can never have enough big, strong, athletic tight ends. So I am totally with you there when it comes to Ogletree. And I'm intrigued to see him now with a full year under his belt and a full off season, not having to rehab, not having to do some of that stuff. Getting same with Jelani Woods, getting that chemistry with Anthony Richardson even more. I'm very intrigued to see kind of how that pans out. So we'll see how that works out. But another tight end, you mentioned him a little bit ago, Will Mallory, the tight end last year for the Colts out of Miami. They took him in that 2023 draft. And, Derek, I know he didn't get a ton of opportunities like Ogletree, but I felt like when he was targeted and when he actually started to get some run at tight end, I thought he made some nice plays. He's not the biggest, strongest, most craziest athlete in the world, although he is very fast, which might help him out in the long term. But Will Mallory's a guy that it felt like we talked about with Jelani Woods, like whenever you got him the ball, good things happened. Now, I don't think it was to the degree of that, but I felt like, when Will Mallory got targets and when they actually threw him the football and he actually had a chance to catch it, he made some plays down the field. He would seem like every catch he made was a first down or something that would help you, moving forward. So, Will Mallory's a guy that I think presents a very unique type of skill set from the fact that, again, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he still is 6'4", 240. So he's not small for a tight end. And he's got a little bit of that speed factor that I think maybe will help him out against maybe some of the other tight ends on the roster. But talk to me about Will Mallory, man. Entering year 2 now with the Colts and, trying to kind of make a splash here with this tight end room.
Yeah, I mean, talk about Will Mallory. Yeah, he was the fastest tight end coming out of the draft this last year. So, or 2 years ago, I guess I should say. So, it was a very interesting circumstance of his athletic ability mixed with the production in college. I mean, Will Mallory, like you said, man, he was really good last year. Caught everything that went to him. You know, didn't really get a lot of chances to really make a lot of catches down the field, but he just was, mainly that possession guy. That was what the majority of his role was. So again, limited to the offense that was being produced at that time. So it is what it is. But I like Will Mallory's skill set. I really like who he is as a person and as a player. And I'm hoping that we see more of him, and I hope he doesn't get lost in the mix of, you know, with the fact that we got all these tight ends. And, I again, if the Colts don't go with 5 tight ends, then is he a casualty to the cut? I mean, as much as I would not like for that to happen, it is a very real possibility because I mean, Cody, I think you and I can sit here and say that there truly is only 2 guys for the most part that are mainly clear when it comes to that. And that's Mo Cox because he's under contract. And as far as with Jelani Woods, because Woods, I believe, has the highest potential of the entire group. Then there's the other 3 behind them that I would argue most likely is Granson, and then you could debate between the others. But I mean, it's going to be one of those very interesting conversations that we have. Of is Will Mallory going to be an unfortunate cut? I would hope not, because I see a lot of good things coming from him. But we'll just have to see because I think that there's a lot more that Will Mallory can do in 2024 that he wasn't able to do in 2023.
Hot take, Derek. I don't know if Molly Cox is as safe as you think he might be. Like,
I don't know.
I don't know if he is
I
because
look at it and say if he wasn't safe, then he would have been gone a while ago. That's just
maybe, but also I look at it and Jelani Woods didn't play a snap last year. So was he just on the roster because they needed another tight end? I don't know. I just don't think he's a guy that I 100% say there's no way the Colts cut him. Like, I think there's a chance. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. It may not. But I think for sure Jelani Woods to me is the only surefire, like, 100% is going to be on the roster, in my opinion, unless something crazy happens. But yeah, when it comes to Will Mallory, that would be a shame because he is unique. He does kind of have that, if you want to, kind of take a quote from Chris Ballard, like he has that blue chip trait. That's his speed, right? He's very, very fast. And, there's some other tight ends that, yeah, they might have some size, but like, are they the type of athlete that Will Mallory is from the speed standpoint? No, they're not. So could that give him an advantage? All I know, Derek, with this tight end room, and I know we'll talk about Mo Ali Cox, which there's not a whole lot to say. I mean, he's big. He's tall. He's athletic. Not very athletic, though. So, like, he's got the size, but not the athleticism. But he's been on this roster for a long, long time. And that's just kind of how it's been. But when it comes, Derek, just to the tight end room in general, I think this is truly a unit that has a ton of potential, but also has an opportunity here. Like we've talked about, even with like the safety room, like where you could say you could find your next like future star at this position or a couple stars, or you could be looking for a number 1 tight end next year. Like it could be to that degree, which is kind of crazy to say that. Now, I think safety is certainly a lot more that way than tight end because I do think there are some guys with like who have legitimately proven they can play, pretty good football for you. And there's a lot more of them. So you're like, at least one of these guys has to hit, right? So, but when it comes to the tight end room, it's like there's so much competition that's going to happen. And I think this, for me, Derek, is going to be one of the biggest like positional battles I'm going to be watching at training camp and in the preseason because you truly don't know, number one, who's going to be the 4 or 5 guys on the roster, however you want to do it. I don't know, like, or 3. Who knows how many they keep? But you don't know who that's going to be. And also, when you do know who it's going to be, you don't know how that order is going to look. So It's just very fascinating to me for the Colts to kind of figure this out. And so I'm just really looking forward to hearing, who does come out on top here at the tight end room, because I truly believe, Derek, this position is probably the most wide open of probably any of them on the roster right now. Like, you truly don't know. Like, we can say Jelani Woods, but we don't know 100%. Like, it could be Kylan Granson, right? It could be Andrew Ogletree, right? It could be, insert whoever else you want to insert in there, right? It could be a lot of these guys. So
Yep.
I'm just very intrigued to see how this is going to work out for this tight end room. But one thing's for certain, the Colts got a lot of young talent in this room, and they have invested when it comes to it, especially for the nature of that position. Like, I know there's certain teams that'll invest, early round picks, but we've seen other teams that, George Kittle was a 5th round pick. And, so it's not always like you have to invest these day 1 or even sometimes day 2 picks into these guys. And the Colts have already done that in terms of day 2, day 3 picks. They've invested a lot into this room. So hoping that they can get some answers with this group and can finally start to figure out who are the guys moving forward. But, man, any closing thoughts here on the tight end room?
Like I said before, it's going to be one of the most intriguing groups when it comes to overall how everyone is going to be utilized, who's going to remain on the roster through all of it, and who gets the number 1 and number 2 and number 3 spots. There's a lot of movement that's going to happen within that group, and I just hope everyone remains healthy so that this unit can thrive in 2024.
Yeah. So, guys, let us know your thoughts on the tight end room. Who do you believe is going to break out for this team? If you had to order the depth chart for the tight ends this year, how you think it'll go, let us know what that would be in the comments down below. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. Be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thanks as always. And as always, go Colts.